she bragged. I hooked up with 3 guys on spring break to her friends. I said, cool story. When the pregnancy test came back positive and none of the 3 answered her calls, the sound of laughter leaked through the thin apartment walls, high-pitched and careless. Ethan paused, one hand still on his laptop, the other clenched around a half-full coffee mug. The laughter wasn't unfamiliar, he'd heard it 1,000 times. It was Meredith's, unmistakable. But this time, it hit different. This time, it sounded like a stranger wearing her voice. 3 months ago, he would have described their life as decent. Not perfect, but functional. Meredith, with her ring-light glow and carefully curated breakfasts, was chasing influencer dreams. Ethan worked remote in project management, stable, invisible, and always paying. He liked structure. She liked attention. They met somewhere in the middle, until lately, the middle had been slipping. The apartment was quiet except for the murmur of wine-fueled conversation bleeding through the wall. Meredith's friends had arrived an hour ago, armed with cheap rose and loud secrets. Ethan had excused himself to his office, planning to let the night pass unnoticed. Then he heard it. So, you're seriously not gonna tell him? That was Jenna's voice, sharp, amused. Tell him what? Meredith teased, feigning innocence. About Cancun, Tori said, her words slowed by alcohol and disbelief. About Blake. Trent. The DJ guy. I mean Meredith 3? Silence. Then Meredith giggled. What happens in Cancun? She whispered. Stays in Cancun. The mug hit the desk with a quiet thud. Ethan didn't blink. He just stared ahead at the screen, blank and glowing, as the voices on the other side of the wall turned into static. He didn't storm out. He didn't scream. He waited. When the laughter finally died down and the room quieted, he stood, walked to the living room, and opened the door. 3 women turned like startled deer. Meredith froze mid-sip. Cool story, he said evenly. Jenna. Tori. You should go. The silence that followed was longer than any scream. They grabbed their things without a word. Meredith stayed frozen, her wine glass trembling. Ethan, I heard everything. Her face crumpled. She reached for him. He stepped back. No more lies. No more pretending. Pack your things. The apartment was suddenly very cold. Outside, the night moved on like nothing had happened. But inside, something had snapped clean. Meredith's suitcase thudded onto the bed like a verdict. I was drunk, she said again, folding clothes with shaky hands. You don't know what that week was like. Ethan stood in the doorway, arms crossed. He didn't trust himself to speak yet. The last hour had moved in slow motion, Jenna and Tori gone, Meredith unraveling, the weight of 2 years collapsing between them. You were drunk every night? He asked finally. Her eyes flicked up. That's not fair. He almost laughed. Fair. As if that word still had meaning here. I gave you $500 for that trip, he said. You maxed out your card on bikinis and blowouts, and I thought, naively, that you just needed a break. Not a lineup. That's not what it was, she snapped. It was a mistake. A few nights that got out of hand. 3 nights. 3 men. She sat down hard, her hands in her hair. God, Ethan. Can you not throw numbers at me like I'm some kind of statistic? I'm not. I'm just trying to understand how the person I've been living with could laugh about cheating like it was part of the all-inclusive package. That landed. She looked away. A long silence stretched between them. You really want me to leave? She said quietly. He didn't answer right away. He looked at the half-packed suitcase, the apartment they'd shared for nearly a year, the shelves she'd cluttered with crystals and perfume and filters no one needed. I want peace, he said. And I can't find it with you here. Tears welled, but she didn't argue again. Maybe she knew there was nothing left to save. An hour later, the door closed behind her. Ethan stood in the kitchen, staring at a wine glass she'd left behind on the counter. Lipstick print at the rim, half full. He picked it up, dumped it into the sink, and turned the water on full blast. It wasn't rage that moved through him, it was numbness. A quiet grief. Not just for the relationship, but for the blind trust he'd given someone who treated it like a costume she could take off when the vacation started. Outside, the city lights blinked like nothing had changed. Inside, Ethan knew everything had. 3 weeks passed in silence. Ethan changed the locks, returned a few of her packages to sender, and let the quiet fill the rooms. The apartment, once cluttered with ring lights and fake plants, finally felt like his again. He had started to feel better. Not good, exactly, but functional. A few beers with friends. A full night's sleep. The kind of peace that felt earned, not given. Then came the call. It was a Wednesday afternoon. He was halfway through a turkey sandwich, catching up on emails, when an unknown number lit up his phone. He stared at it. Hesitated. Then, against his better judgment, answered. Ethan? He froze. Her voice was quiet, trembling. What do you want, Meredith? I need to talk to you. We've already talked. Not like this. She inhaled sharply, and when she spoke again, her voice cracked. I'm pregnant. The word dropped like an anvil. The silence that followed stretched so long he wondered if the call had disconnected. Not mine, he said flat. I thought it was. I really did. But I've tried to reach them. Blake changed his number. Trent isn't answering. And the DJ guy. Her breath hitched. I don't even know his real name. Ethan pushed his chair back slowly. The sandwich sat forgotten. Then call them again. Not my problem. Ethan, please. I'm scared. You should have thought about that before bragging about Cancun like it was Girls Gone Wild. The line went quiet. Then a whisper. We were together the week before I left. You remember. I wasn't careful. What if it's yours? He didn't flinch. Then you can take a test. And if by some nightmare chance it is, we'll talk. But until then, don't call me again. He hung up. A minute passed. Then 5. The phone lit up again. New number. Then another. Then Facebook Messenger pinged. You can't ignore me. The baby could be yours. Be a man. You're abandoning your child. Ethan sat still. His jaw tightened. This wasn't heartbreak anymore. This was war. And he'd be damned if he went into it without backup. He picked up his phone and Googled, family lawyer near me. Ethan sat across from Mr. Rodriguez, a calm, precise man with silver temples and a voice like gravel. His office smelled faintly of old books and coffee. If she pushes paternity, we demand a test, the lawyer said, sliding a document across the desk. Do not give her money. Do not sign anything. And above all, don't let her narrative control the situation. Ethan nodded. She's already on Instagram calling me a deadbeat. No names, but enough breadcrumbs for people to figure it out. Rodriguez sighed. That won't help her once we get a result. But until then, keep documenting. Every message. Every lie. That night, Meredith escalated. She showed up at his office building screaming in the lobby, security dragging her away as she wailed about being abandoned. Her sister Cassie appeared at his apartment 2 days later with Meredith in tow, pounding on the door while neighbors peeked from down the hall. Open up, Ethan! Cassie shouted. You got my sister pregnant and now you're hiding like a coward? He didn't open the door. Instead, he opened his phone and hit record. Document everything. The lawsuit came next, a formal petition for child support. Ethan didn't even blink when he opened the envelope. Rodriguez smiled when he handed it over. Now we forced the test. The clinic was sterile, quiet. Meredith arrived in oversized sweats, sunglasses indoors, flanked by her mother and sister like it was some kind of mob trial. She wouldn't look at Ethan. He didn't look at her either. A blood draw for her. A cheek swab for him. In and out in 15 minutes, but the tension followed him home. The next 2 days stretched thin with anxiety. He didn't want it to be his, but a sliver of doubt had wormed in. That week before the trip, she wasn't wrong, they'd been careless. Once. He stared at his phone, waiting. On the third day, Rodriguez finally called. You sitting down? Just tell me. The pause wasn't long, but Ethan could hear his heart in his ears. 0%. You're not the father. He exhaled like he'd been underwater. I want it in writing. Already emailed. Ethan leaned back in his chair, a slow, stunned smile breaking across his face. The screenshot of the test result hit Ethan's feed like a grenade. 0% probability of paternity caption. Science doesn't lie. Best of luck to the actual father. No tagging. No hashtags. Just the facts. His phone lit up like a slot machine. Apologies slid into his DMs, quiet, panicked ones, from people who had once accused him of abandonment. Others admitted they donated to Meredith's GoFundMe, which now sat in flames. GoFundMe launched an investigation, refunds were processed, and the donations she'd already spent turned into debt. Meredith spiraled. She posted cryptic quotes for days, blurred ultrasound images, sad music over moody selfies. The comments shifted from sympathy to scorn. Her following collapsed. Sponsors bailed. Brands ghosted her. Whatever, influencer, credibility she once claimed evaporated in the wake of the truth. But it wasn't over. Blake's wife, Veronica, was a storm in heels. She'd hired a PI, traced Meredith through social media tags and tagged vacation photos, and had proof Blake wasn't working late during Cancun. Veronica didn't just file for divorce, she sued Meredith for alienation of affection. And she had receipts. The fallout cracked open like an avalanche. Trent, tracked down through Jenna's contacts, agreed to test out of sheer exhaustion, and revealed he was gay, had a long-term boyfriend, and didn't even remember the encounter clearly. Another dead end. Only Xavier remained. The elusive yacht party DJ. No last name. No number. Just a stage name and a spray tan. Meredith spent hundreds trying to track him. She even created a fake Instagram account pretending to be him, messaging Ethan for travel money to take the paternity test. But the grammar was too perfect. The desperation too obvious. He forwarded the messages to Rodriguez. 2 hours later, Meredith's lawyer dropped her. No one would represent her anymore. And then came the final, pathetic moment. Ethan, browsing at the grocery store, ran into Diane, Meredith's mother. Her shoulders were slumped. Her face older. She looked at him like a woman watching a house she'd built burn to the ground. She swore it was yours, she whispered. I believed her. I spent everything. My retirement. My peace. Ethan nodded. I'm sorry, he said, and meant it, not for Meredith, but for the wreckage left behind. The damage was total. But he had walked out of the fire untouched. A year passed. The city didn't change, but Ethan had. Subtle things. He smiled more now, but slower. He checked the locks twice before bed, not out of fear, but because he'd learned what it felt like to open your door to someone who lied their way in. Meredith was gone. Last he heard, she'd moved out of state. Closed adoption. No sign of the father. No more hashtags. No more campaigns. She left the mess behind like luggage she refused to claim. Jenna messaged once. Just a simple, she's working at a receptionist's desk somewhere. Still pretending everything's fine. He didn't respond. Lucia came into his life 8 months ago. No drama. No staged photos. She asked thoughtful questions and laughed without checking if anyone was watching. She was grounded, kind, and didn't flinch when he told her the whole story over dinner on their 4th date. Instead, she said, You must have felt like you were going crazy. He had. And no one had put it into words that plainly until then. Ethan's apartment looked different now, less curated, more lived in. The ring light was gone. So were the pastel prints, and the fake marble candle holders. Replaced by a small bookshelf, a coffee plant that was somehow still alive, and a hand-thrown mug Lucia bought him from a market just because she thought he'd like the way it felt in his hands. One night, as they watched a movie with their feet tangled under a shared blanket, Lucia glanced at him and asked, "Do you think you'll ever hear from her again?" He didn't look away from the screen. "I don't need to." Later, he lay in bed alone, staring at the ceiling fan turning slow. He wasn't bitter. Just finished. Like the last page of a book you finally close after carrying it around too long. He reached for his phone, tapped into his notes, and typed something. A single sentence. Not to post. Just to keep. Sometimes the worst thing someone does to you is the best thing that ever happened to you. Then he turned off the light. And the dark, this time, was peaceful.